A New Hope, Nier Chapter 127 Fan Fiction by Azazyel. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel for listening and patreon.com/Azazyel to read all of Azazyel's stories. With YoRHa combing the planet and the androids blessed with YoRHa, we were quickly mapping out the planet, marking resources, and of course, gathering Chozo Seal Keys along with securing historical places of interest so as to not harm the history of Samus's people, much to her appreciation. With my androids busy leading a milk run of an assault onto a space pirate stronghold in the desert badlands that had little to no cover for the space pirates, I was looking over some reports of YoRHa's forces. A couple of dozen androids' bodies were lost due to the very hostile wildlife and likewise to self-detonations at suspected Phazon corruption, but their data was well stored up so their minds were just reuploaded into new bodies. Beyond the core being infected with Phazon, this world not only can be a decent world to mine out precious minerals that cannot be so easily mined from Remnant, but its forest region is also very temperate and good for farming, I muttered as I realized how good of a find this world was. Sure, the wildlife was dangerous but not as dangerous as Grimm, which had a conceptual desire to kill things that bore emotions and the things that were created by them and tainted by the emotions of sentient life. And I wasn't going to have Salem work herself to death in controlling the wild Grimm of the world that was a perfect testbed to train super soldiers in hunters/huntresses. To say nothing of how the swarms of Grimm across Remnant kept humanity/faunus from also going to war over petty shit. I eventually put away my scroll as I heard the crunching of gravel and I looked behind me and saw Samus walking over with her helmet tucked into the side of her arm so I could at least see her expression. "Jake." She greeted and I nodded with her coughing and saying with a small smile. "It's pretty great to work with people who can keep up with me. Even the best in the Human Federation with cybernetics cannot keep up with me on missions," she remarked. I smiled wryly as I responded dryly. "Well, we literally have magic, they mostly aren't human, and the ones who aren't androids come from a world with monsters made from the condensed negative emotions of all life on the planet trying to overrun them and bring about extinction, so they are natural super soldiers that are further enhanced with magic and special powers." Samus's lips twitched at the reminder that she wasn't the only super special, super solider in the camp. I sighed and looked up toward the cloudy sky that hung over the thick almost jungle-like forest part of Talon for where the space pirate ship had crashed and thus became our main base. "Either way, what's going on, Samus?" I asked frankly and snapped to attention as well from her thoughts. She paused and her deep blue eyes searched my own for something before a small smile formed on her face as she said with some humor. "Actually, I was hoping you could teach me more about this aura and magic stuff you gave me when we..." "Yeah," she said with a small flush at the reminder of how we made out and shared a bit of our soul's essence due to her forcing her space aids on me. I nodded with a shrug as I didn't have anything better to do with how Remnant's time was moving slowly in comparison to Metroid's time was moving. So with Weiss and my team being busy with their families, I certainly wasn't in a rush. I flexed my will and a thick wooden bench grew from the ground in front of me for Samus to sit down within at my hand wave. "Well, YoRHa is a good place to start," I said as Samus took her seat and laid her helmet in her armored lap. "So YoRHa is called the light of a person's soul, which isn't at all a metaphor," I said holding up my hand and conjuring up my dark purple aura that covered my hand. Even as I dismissed the aura I continued on. "YoRHa as the manifestation of the soul turned inside out basically to protect your physical form does a number of things actually. First, it physically protects you with a force field that will need some testing to see how it reacts to your Chozo suit that has its own built-in a force field and whatnot. Other than that, it boosts the natural body's strength, durability, and other functions to a decent level." I briefly explained the jargon of YoRHa before getting to the heart of the matter. And of course, YoRHa has one more major feature. Just as each soul is completely unique in of itself, they express themselves all differently in the unlocked aura, providing the user with a semblance which is an expression of the soul that is unique to them. Then I went on to show my own expression of my soul and my semblance, which was gap manipulation. Which utterly fucking baffled Samus with how bullshit it was. "So, you can fold the gap between spaces to teleport, which makes sense as that's connected wormholes and is well studied," Samus said holding her face in her hands, but then she pointed at me and said dramatically. "But how the hell do you close the gap between weights and mass to fly?" she demanded. I merely smiled confidently as I floated in the air and said plainly. "It's simple, I closed the gap of my current weight and becoming weightless so I could float, but not just get ejected off the very planet due to gravity being unable to hold me," I answered, and if anything Samus clearly wanted to demand what else I could do. But in the end, I moved the conversation along, talking about the elemental magic she also inherited from me but lesser in widespread use as her magical energy was middling at best. Okay, it was pathetic actually due to her not having any form of magical potential before we shared spit. Once I was done talking about magic and stuff, we moved the conversation towards herself. What she wanted to do, and what her plans were after this mission was complete in killing the Phazon on this planet to avenge her Chozo people. Well, if YoRHa needs help after we deal with the Phazon and space pirates, I would be glad to help, Samus said firmly, and I smiled teasingly as I responded. Oh, and what about humble old me after you stole my kisses and a literal part of my soul? I asked, and she raised an eyebrow, and then in a smooth motion she leaned forward and I felt the cold yet flexible fingers of her armored hand cup my chin as her lips descended upon my own with her tongue aggressively pushing into my mouth. And with a subtle smacking noise our lips popped apart as her deep blue eyes stared into my own as she confidently whispered. I am half Chozo and we mate for life like most birds. You aren't escaping me, Jake Barris. Oh dear, I may have snagged a dummy mommy mercenary waifu on accident, what do I do now? I mentally whispered as Samus's armored hand fisted my jacket to pull me into another dominating kiss as she leaned over me.